Hello, class 10th students. Greetings of the day. Today we are having the second lecture of our chapter number 2, Growth of Nationalism in India. In last lecture, we were studying about the socio-religious reform movements in India, and we studied about the point that these socio-religious reform movements and the reformers tried to teach equality and to do away with caste system. They gave special attention to women's position in society and their education. They all tried to instill confidence in the minds of the Indians and make them proud of their culture. Now, how these socio-religious reform movements were helping in the growth of nationalism in India. See, nationalism cannot grow until and unless people are united. And people can't be united if they don't consider themselves equal to each other. If there is a caste division or class division or society is divided on some other basis, then they will never have a feeling of equality and they will not be united. And when they'll not be united, they will not have a nationalistic feeling. Their interest may vary from person to person, right? So for this, first of all, the principle of equality was supposed to be promoted. So these social reformers tried to teach equality and to do away with caste system, right? Like in India, so many caste and classes were there. In classes in Hindu religion, majorly Brahman, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. These were divided into the four classes, and within these classes, so many castes were there. Okay, within Brahmans, so many castes were there. Within Kshatriyas, there were so many other castes. Still, we are having caste Chaudhary, Jats, okay, or some other castes are there. Okay, so not among Hindus, but also among Muslims were also divided in Shia, Sunni, Pathan, Turk. Okay, so these means, and they didn't used to consider each other equal. Shudras were considered very bad. Okay, they were not considered equal. Their condition was very bad. So these Shudras, a large section of Indian society was Shudras. So these things were acting like a hindrance in the growth of national movement. So these were removed by our social reformers. Then the half part of Indian society was women, and the women condition was not good in India. Their position was deteriorated. They were not considered equal to the men. Okay, so these social reformers launched various reform movements in order to improve the condition of women, the position of women, right? And when their position was improved, they also became the part of our national movement. Then third thing which is very very important for having a nationalistic feeling is that that feeling of pride. Okay, if you are not full of proud of your culture, you are not proudful of your culture, your history or your ancestors, then you may not have a feeling of oneness. Okay, so Indian people used to consider Western culture, English culture superior than the Indian culture, right? And they were taught that Indians were very, you can say, they were just like a prey to be ruled. Okay, prey means they used to become victim of, some outsiders, and those outsiders used to rule on them. They were taught like this. But actually, this whole thing was distortion of history, and Britishers presented the glorious history of Indians in such a way that Indians started considering their ancestors and their history as a bloat, okay, or something which was not glorious. Okay, but then later on, what happened? Later on, the exact history, the true history was told to them. Okay, and the pride in their culture was stirred. Okay, instilled. So they all tried to instill confidence in the minds of Indians and make them proud of their culture. Dayanand Saraswati said, "India for the Indians." This is in brief what the reformers wanted Indians to feel, right? So earlier Indians were not having feeling that India belongs to them. They thought that okay, they are born to be ruled by these Britishers. Okay, so first time Dayanand Saraswati, who founded Arya Samaj also, right? He said that India is for only Indians. Okay, and they are to be ruled by themselves. Okay, then around the same time, Badruddin Tayyibji worked for the upliftment of women. Badruddin Tayyibji also worked for the upliftment of women. Other educated Muslims spoke up against the Parda system, polygamy. So these two, you can say, some uh, among Muslim society, okay, these two discrepancies were there. Okay, uh, there was parda system and polygamy was practiced. Okay, so they were also removed. So we can see both Hindus and Muslims had tried to do away with evils which had crept in to be ready to face the challenges of the British. Okay, so until and unless these social evils as well as religious discrepancies in Indian society, right, were not removed, we would not have a feeling of nationalism, or we would not have come together to fight against the Britishers. So, in order to have a nationalistic feeling or to be the part of Indian nationalism, we were supposed to be united, and we could be united only when we considered each caste class as well as women equal to us. Okay, so it was, you can say, the society and the religions were reformed in order to uh, inspire or instill the nationalistic feeling among the Indians. Now we will study about two prominent social reformers in this chapter. The first prominent social reformer was Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Okay, very frequently questions are asked. Okay, that who was father of Indian Renaissance? In one mark question it is asked who was father of Indian Renaissance. So he was Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Okay, and sometime also see, I have drawn this red color line, if you can see here. This is great reformer. Two great reformers we study about: Raja Ram Mohan Roy 1770 to 1833, and Jyotiba Phule from 1827 to 1890. After that, this portion belongs to Raja Ram Mohan Roy only. Okay, this much, right? So okay, Raja Ram Mohan Roy. And sometimes it is also asked, who is called the prophet of Indian nationalism? So the answer for both the question, that is father of Indian Renaissance and prophet of Indian nationalism, is Rajaram Mohan Roy. Okay, he set up Hindu college in Calcutta. He opposed caste system. He emphasized women liberty. He spoke for abolition of sati. Okay, with his triumph, with his you can say efforts, sati was banned by William Bentinck in 1829. Okay, William Bentinck in 1829. William Bentinck was the Governor General of India at the time, and he voiced against idolatry. Okay, he voiced against idolatry and against polytheism also, right? Polytheism, when you believe in so many gods. Okay, and if you are having belief in only one god, that is monotheism, right? So he promoted monotheism, and he voiced against idolatry. Idolatry means worshipping an idol, right? And he popularized Vedanta philosophy. Okay, he popularized Vedanta philosophy. He stood for freedom of press. Okay, he stood for freedom of press also. Like in we have also studied about Lord Lytton's repressive policy, which was one Vernacular Press Act of 1878. Okay, right. So he was always supporting the, you can say, freedom of press. Who? Rajaram Mohan Roy. Okay, before Vernacular Press Act also. Okay, then economic liberalism. He favored economic liberalism. He founded Brahmo Samaj in 1828. Okay, since Brahmo Samaj, this was an organization. Okay, first it was founded with the name Atmiya Sabha. Okay, and then after that, this Atmiya Sabha was changed. Its name was changed into Brahmo Sabha, and then in 1828, this Brahmo Sabha was changed further into Brahmo Samaj. So Brahmo Samaj was founded by Rajaram Mohan Roy in 1828. So he advocated nationalism as well as internationalism, means the harmony and peace between the countries. He synthesized religion and morality. Okay, he synthesized religion and morality. He mixed religion with the morality. He said that the things which are against the morals cannot be religion. Okay, so these were the important points you should remember. The prophet of Indian nationalism, father of Indian Renaissance, and abolition of Sati 1829. Okay, and foundation of Brahmo Samaj 1828. These are the very 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 important points. Then we are having the next page, which is here. Just give me a second. Let me adjust it. I hope it is visible to you. Okay. Okay, right. Now we will study about Jyotiba Phule. Jyotiba Phule was from a low class or low caste, okay, from an urban area. He was an educated person, and he worked for the upliftment of lower classes or low caste people, or the, you can say, socially deprived people. So he emancipation of lower caste. Emancipation means liberation or freedom or salvation, you can say, of lower caste. He fought for the rights of lower caste. He emphasized women education. Okay, and he opened a school for girls and lower caste in 1854. In 1854, he opened a school for lower caste people and girls. He also opened orphanages where young widows and their children were sheltered. Okay, he opened orphanage where young widows and their children were sheltered. They were given a shelter. They were allowed to live there in that orphanage. Orphanage means a place where a person whose parents have died live. Okay, then advocated widow remarriage act. Okay, widows were not allowed to remarry at a time. Okay, it was a social evil, right? If someone's husband used to die, right, she was forced uh, to be burned alive along with the death body of her husband. Okay, so that was called sati or human immolation. That was a very cruel practice, and they were not allowed to remarry. So Jyotiba Phule, as well, Raja Ram Mohan Roy fought against sati pratha, or you can say human immolation system at a time. Okay, female human immolation. And Jyotiba Phule advocated for the widow remarriage. He formed Satya Shodhak Samaj in 1873. Then he opposed child marriage. He opposed religious dogmas. Okay, religious dogmas or hypocrisies. Okay, work for the creation of equitable society. He worked to create equitable society where all people were equal, irrespective of their caste. Okay, where the lower caste people were not ill treated by the higher caste people. Okay, that was all about Jyotiba Phule. So this was under this heading, socio-religious reform movements. Okay, socio-religious reform movement was one of the factor for the growth of nationalism in India. Okay, we are studying the factors for responsible for the growth of nationalism. Factors promoting growth of nationalism in this socio-religious reform movement was also one of the factor. So we have studied economic exploitation by British, repressive colonial policies of Lord Lytton. These two will not be asked. We have studied socio-religious reform movement. This is very very important, and you should remember this. Okay, this may be asked. And role of press is going to be surely asked, right? So role of press was also one of the factor for promoting nationalism in India. Now, what was the role of press that we will study? Uh, Role of press: criticize the wrongdoings of British. Who criticized? Press, newspapers. Okay, especially the vernacular newspapers, or the newspapers which were published in the common you can say public language, or the language of mass. Okay, like Bengali, like Udiya, like Marathi. Okay, these. So these newspapers criticize the wrongdoings of Britishers, right? They expose Britishers, that how they were exploiting and doing evil to the India. Then educate the Indians about political happenings all around the world. Okay, they inform that what is happening in France, what was happening in America, Okay, how the modern ideas of equality, liberty, fraternity, okay, and rights and self-determinations are spreading in European countries as well as in Americas. Okay, then arouse the spirit of nationalism, right? Praise aroused the spirit of nationalism. Okay, the people got motivated, inspired, okay, to get united and fight against the Britishers, mobilize public opinion on important issues. Okay, and public opinion always play a very very important role even in today's India. Okay, modern India, where we are having democracy. In this at this time also, public opinion plays very crucial role. Okay, if the opinion of public is made towards one particular party or particular issue, then that is done. Okay, if we talk about elections or we talk about some social or religious issue, okay, then the decision which is liked by most, or the things which is liked by the most of the people, is done. Okay, so you can say the public is always very very strong factor, okay, for determining the issues, right? So mobilize public opinion on important issues, right? Then growth of Indian press, how Indian press grew. So so many patrikas and newspapers were published. Amrit Bazar Patrika was published. The Bengali was published. Bengali Gazette or Miratul Akbar, Indian Social Reformer, Maratha and Kesari. Okay, these were newspapers, right? Maratha was published in English, uh, and Kesari was published in Hindi. Okay, it was published by Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Then Sambad Komudi was published by Rajaram Mohan Roy. Then Shome Prakash, Rasto Avtar. Okay, these all newspapers and magazines were published. English newspapers were also there in 19th century. The Times of India, Pioneer, Madras Mail, Statesman, The Hindu. Okay, these were also published. So you have to remember the names of these English newspapers and the names of these newspapers, okay, which were in vernacular languages. Okay, here Maratha was in English. Just remember that. Okay, these newspapers and these newspapers you have to remember, and these points you have to remember how which role played the press. Okay, they did what? First of all, they criticize wrongdoings and they educate Indian people about political happenings all around the world. They aroused nationalism among Indians and they mobilized public opinion. So these were the four, you can say, role played by the press. Then the next factors for promoting growth of nationalism is rise of middle class. Okay, so it is middle class, higher class, middle class and lower class. Okay, we have these three classes. It is usually the middle class which is the backbone of any revolution. India's middle class was expanded at this time. Okay, so uh, whether we talk about French revolution or we talk about Russian revolution, okay, middle class has always played a crucial role, okay, in bringing about revolutions. Okay, and it has been the backbone of any revolution. So in India also, the middle class was the backbone of revolution. There were doctors, teachers and lawyers who clearly understood that it was British economic policy which was responsible for Indian plight. Okay, so the middle people, the middle class, that was composed of doctors, teachers, lawyers, and other educated people. Okay, they look into the designs of Britishers, and they came to know that only Britishers are responsible for the miseries, for the all troubles of India. Okay, for Indians plight, who was responsible? Economic policies of British, and the British were responsible. Sorry. Then the sixth factor for promoting nationalism in India was spread of English language and Western education. Okay, by learning English, Indians came closer to one another as English served as a link language in India. Okay, so at the time, so many uh, regional languages were prevalent. Okay, like Bengali, like Maratha. Okay, and people were not able to converse with each other. Okay, like suppose if, means the Maratha people were not able to communicate with the Bengali people. Bengali people were not able to communicate with some other regional speaking people. Okay, so a language barrier was something which was hindering the growth of nationalism in India. Okay, so English was learned by everybody in entire India, by Maratha also, by Bengali also, by Odia people also, by Tamil also, by Keralites also. Okay, by Punjabi people also, and this common language was used to communicate with each other, right? And it served as a link language in India. So it brought the people from various regions of India very close to each other. Okay, then Western ideas learned through the works of Rousseau and Garibaldi enthused Indian minds. Okay, the works of Rousseau, John Locke, okay, and the Garibaldis. These were the heroes of Indian political people, right? They inspired Indian politicians a lot. Okay, and then the slogans or the watchwords of the French Revolution: liberty, equality, and fraternity. Right, fraternity is brotherhood. Right, liberty, equality, and fraternity were learned by Indians. Indians also demanded liberty, okay, and equality and fraternity, right? Through Western education, Indians learned how the British themselves treated their cruel monarch, how they hanged King Charles I in 1949, sorry, 1649, as he was very cruel. So they learned that how means by studying Western education, or by learning English and then studying Western education, they became familiar with modern ideas of equality, liberty, fraternity, self-determination, okay, and rights, human rights, right? And they demanded these all things. Various philosophies, okay, those were people centric, or you can say citizen centric, okay, those were liked by the Indian people, right? And they also studied that how English people treated their absolute monarchs, right? How they used to treat their cruel monarchs, like they treated King Charles first in 1649, right, as he was very cruel. So these all things, you can say, broaden the mind of Indian people, the mindset of Indian people, right? And it also worked as one of the factor for growing nationalism in India. Now we will study the next point, which is rediscovery of India's past. Now, what does that mean, rediscovery of India's past? See, Indian people forget about their glorious past, and they had a feeling of cultural and historical inferiority. Okay, they used to consider Britishers superior in race, superior in culture, superior in education, and everything, right? So they were not in condition to stand against the Britishers, right? So uh, in order to, you can say, make them stand against Britishers, first of all, a cultural, or you can say, uh, cultural or historical, right, uh, pride was supposed to be stirred among them, okay, instilled among them, right? So now, reinterpretation of Indian history. Okay, Indian history, first of all, Indian history was distorted by Britishers, and it was presented in front of Indians in a way that they thought that their ancestors didn't have some significant or any significant achievement. Okay, so then afterwards, what happened? Afterwards, a reinterpretation of Indian history was done. Okay, glorious development in ancient times were highlighted. Now here I would like to tell you that they are saying glorious development in ancient times were highlighted. Okay, glorious developments in ancient times. Okay, they means from the modern age they went back to the ancient age, not to the medieval period. Okay, so these, there were some extreme type of you can say national leaders, those who wanted to ignore a particular, you can say, community, or I don't know why they did so, but they ignored the medieval history of India and its achievement. Okay, they went back to the ancient and ignored medieval. They took immense pride in the ancient India, but not in the medieval India. right? So it created a wedge or a gap between Hindus and Muslims, between the two communities. Okay, uh, Muslims felt ignored because the medieval India past was dominant by the Delhi Sultanate and the Mughal era. Okay, and various achievements were done by both the dynasties, you can say, or in both the periods, right? So that was the achievements of Mughals as well as Delhi Sultanate were ignored, and the achievements in the ancient India were glorified. Okay, so it created a kind of wedge in Indian society, right? And that wedge we can see in today's time also. Okay, Indian art, architecture, science, mathematics, religion, culture, law, and philosophy were popularized. Okay, Indian art was popularized. Its architecture, Dravidian architecture, or this northern architecture. Okay, various forms of arts, Gandharva. Okay, or science, mathematics, religion, culture, law, philosophy. Okay, various philosophies. Okay, like we have studied in last chapter, six schools of philosophy, right? These were popularized. Then nationalist novels were written, like novels like Anandmat, Neel Darpan inspired Indians against British atrocities. Okay, these novels also inspired Indian people to stand against the Britishers. Okay, they also inspired Indian people, like Anandmat and Neel Darpan. You have to remember names: Anandmat and Neel Darpan. Nationalist images like of Bharat Mata attracted Indians. National flags was designed by different nationalist leaders to give an all India preview. Okay, so images like Bharat Mata attracted Indians, right? So here also a kind of communal tension also grew along with this thing. Okay, if you study all NCERT books, then you will come to know about all these things. Okay, so then next is Asiatic Society of Bengal. The Asiatic Society was set up to study Indian history and culture. Excavation of Sarnath and Sanchi. Sir Alexander Cunningham, who was the founder of ASI, Archaeological Survey of India, okay, helped in the excavation at Sarnath and Sanchi. James Prinsep was able to puzzle out the Kharoshti script and read what was carved on pillar of Ashoka. Later, the discovery of Indus Valley civilization helped to rebuild the glory of ancient India. Okay, so then afterwards, in 1921, 1922, what happened? Indus Valley civilization was also discovered. Okay, the sites were discovered, and it also gave Indian people a historical pride, you can say. Okay, then translation of Indian text. A number of European scholars studied Indian ancient works, translated them, and helped the common man regain self confidence. Okay, so a number of European scholars studied Indian text, okay, in Sanskrit language and translated into English, okay, and some other common languages, and the common people studied all these things, okay, and took the immense pleasure and pride in those texts. Then Max Muller studied the Vedas and translated the Rig Veda and clearly expressed his ideas in his book India, What It Can Teach Us. Okay, so Max Muller studied Vedas and translated the Rig Veda. Okay, these were the factors promoting growth of nationalism in India. Now we will study the Indian National Congress and the precursors of the Indian National Congress. Okay, so precursors of the Indian National Congress. Precursors means the organizations or parties which were formed before Indian National Congress. Societies, organizations, and assemblies, right, formed by Indian people before the formation of Indian National Congress. The first political association to be started in India was the Landholder Society in Kolkata in 1838. Okay, so you have to remember that, okay, in 1838, Zamindar Sabha or Landholder Society was formed in Kolkata. It was the first political association. I'm saying political association, right? Then many other public associations were started in different parts of India, like Bengal British India Society, British Indian Association, East India Association, London India Society, Indian Association. Okay, among this we will study about East India Association, Indian Association, and Indian National Congress. So East India Association was founded in 1866. When? 1866, and it was founded by Dada Bhai Noroji. Okay, in London. Why it was formed? It was formed to let the British in London know the problems faced in India. Okay, by this, by through this East India Association, Dada Bhai Naroji was educating British people about the problems of Indians. Okay, which were the problems were bringing the problems of Indian people were bringing into the kind notice of Britishers. Okay, through this East India Association. Then it influenced people in England to promote Indian welfare of India. Then Indian Association 1876. It was set up by Surendranath Banerjee in Kolkata. Which Indian Association? Okay. Which party? Indian Association. It was set up by Surendranath Banerjee in Kolkata in 1876. Main objective were to create a strong public opinion, to make a strong public opinion, to promote unity among Indians, to broaden the base of national movement. It launched agitation against oppressive acts such as the License Act, the Arms Act, and the Vernacular Press Act, and also struggled against age limit, right? In ICSC examination and against oppression by zamindars. Okay, so this was the association which was formed by Surendranath Banerjee. He himself was an ICS. Okay, it was formed in 1876, right? And its main objective was first one to make create a strong public opinion, to promote unity among Indians, to broaden the base of national movement. It launched agitation against oppressive acts such as the License Act, the Arms Act, and the Vernacular Press Act. Okay, this Arms Act and Vernacular Press Act we have also studied in last pages, that okay, it was passed by Lord Lytton. Okay, Vernacular Press Act was passed in 1878. Okay, and also struggle against age limit in ICS. Okay, ICS earlier age limit was 21, maximum age limit. Then it was reduced to 19. Okay, uh, so they also you can say worked or struggled against oppression by zamindars. Then we will study Indian National Congress. Indian National Congress, INC. Okay. Uh, it was, you can say, an organization which has played very significant role in the independence of India. Okay, since it was formed, it was the sole party or the very much dominant or the major party of Indian political leaders or national leaders who fought against the Britishers. So how it was formed, when it was formed, okay, and who was its president, okay, in the first session, these all things we are going to study. So Indian leaders like Surendranath Banerjee, Dada Bhai Noroji, Firoz Shah Mehta, Badruddin Tayyibji wanted to make an all India political association. So these were the, you can say, later on they were called the moderates. Okay, these moderates wanted to make a political association. Okay, political party. Okay, India political association. Among them, Firoz Shah Mehta, Badruddin Tayyibji, Surendranath Banerjee, and Dada Bhai Noroji were there, right? So they were thinking to make some such kind of political association. Then the help came from A.O. Hume, Alan Octavian Hume, who was ex-civil servant. Okay, he helped them. They were helped by Alan Octavian, A.O. Hume, a retired ICS who wanted to set up an organization that would draw government's attention to the administrative drawbacks and suggest mean to rectify them. A.O. Hume was also planning to to set up an organization that would draw government's attention, okay, to the administrative drawback, as he himself was an administrator, okay, so he knew what are the drawbacks in the administration, okay, and he wanted to rectify all these things. Some people says that he was the agent of the British people, and British wanted to make to create an association, okay, for Indian people, which could act as a safety wall for Britishers, because they were afraid that if the anger of the Indian people kept culminating, then it may again break out in the form of revolt of 1857, and this time they will not be able to tolerate or to tackle that huge or massive revolt, okay. So they thought that it is better to take out the anger of or channelize the anger of Indian people, okay, and to take out their anger from time to time, okay, through an organization, okay. That's why they helped in making of Indian National Congress. It is called safety wall theory, it is also said, okay, that we will study. Then the Viceroy, Lord Dufferin, favored the formation of INC because he wanted it to act as a safety wall for popular discontent. Okay, this I have already told you. Then the first session of INC was held at Gokul Das Tejpal Sanskrit College, Mumbai, from December 28 to 31, 1885, under the presidency of Yomesh Chandra Banerjee. It was attended by 72 delegates. This point is very, very important. So many questions asked from this point. Okay. What happened? They decided to organize the first session of Indian National Congress at Pune, but there was plague spread in Pune. Okay, so they postponed that meeting of 25 December, and then they called it in Mumbai, and it was started from December 28. Okay, before December 28, it was called Indian National Union. Okay, this Indian National Union was renamed in on December 28, okay, and was renamed as Indian National Congress. So that is why we call the date of formation of Indian National Congress was December 28, 1885, okay, and before December 28 it was called Indian National Union. So if the question is asked when was Indian National Congress formed, you will write December 28, 1885. Then they may ask a question who was the president of the first session of Indian National Congress. So he was Vyomesh Chandra Banerjee. Then they may ask a question how many delegates attended the first session of Indian National Congress. Then you will have to say 72 delegates. Then they may ask a question where was the first session of Indian National Congress organized. Then you have to write Gokul Das Tejpal Sanskrit College, Mumbai. Okay, then the second session of 1886 was held at Kolkata under the presidency of Dadabhai Nauroji. So this first session and second session, these two sessions are asked very frequently, okay, and you have to write, okay, the second session president was Dadabhai Nauroji, okay. Here in this session, the Indian National Conference of Indian National Conference of this one Banerjee, Surendranath Banerjee, okay. Surendranath Banerjee's Indian National Conference got merged, okay, with Indian National Congress in the second session of 1886, which was held at Kolkata under the presidency of Dadabhai Nauroji. Now we will study about the objective and aims of Indian National Congress. What were the objective? The first objective was, see, this is very, very important question. They ask objectives many times, okay. What were the objectives of Indian National Congress? So the first objective was uniting the people of India, to unite people of India, train and organize public opinion, to you can say to create public opinion of people. First of all, tell them what is right, what is wrong, how they are being exploited by the Britishers, okay, what is good for them, and making a public opinion, okay, by telling so. Then making people politically aware, okay, what is going on in throughout the globe, okay, what is happening in France, what is happening in you can say America, and what we should do in our politics, okay. So making people politically aware, learning to formulate just demands and then placing these in front of Britishers, okay. Their objective was to learn how to formulate just demands for Indians, okay, how means they wanted to improve the condition of Indian people, and for that how they could present their demands in front of British people, okay, in order to you can say for the redressal of their grievances, right? So learning to formulate just demands and then placing these in front of the British. Then next was planning for the future of country. Okay, they planned for the future of country. It was also one of the objective of Indian National Congress. Now we will study about the important terms and persons. Okay, A.O. Hume, he was a member of Imperial Civil Services and a political reformer. He saw the revolt of 1857 as a result of misgovernance and wanted to improve the lives of common people in India. He was the founder of Indian National Congress. Okay, you have to remember about A.O. Hume that he was the founder of, you can say, Indian National Congress, and he was ex-civil servant, and he saw the revolt of 1857 as a result of misgovernance and wanted to improve the lives of common people in India. Then Dadabhai Nauroji, question asked about Dadabhai Nauroji, who was the grand old man of India. Okay, right? So popularly known as Grand Old Man of India. He was a Parsi. He was Parsi intellectual, educator, political, social leader. He was one of the founding member of Indian National Congress. So you have to remember about Dadabhai Nauroji that he was the grand old man of India, and his one theory, the drain of India's wealth. Okay, theory is very very popular. Okay, that we will study in next chapter. Then we will study about Lord Lytton. About Lord Lytton, he was an English statesman and poet. He served as